Hello, Misfit Nation. This is Dave Lucas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneurial, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to this channel, hit the subscribe button below, give this video a like, and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Adam House. Adam is a highly successful entrepreneur and former professional athlete. He started and built multiple entities to six figures, and he's had several seven-figure exits. Also is the co-owner of a professional sports team too. Through his company, House of Bricks, Adam advises businesses and provides strategic direction where he blends his experience as an entrepreneur with his experience as a pro athlete to help clients succeed. And it's this blend of experience that I really want to dig in with him today. So let's jump in. Adam, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show. When you make the introduction, it makes me sound like a lot better than I am. So appreciate the introduction there.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. And you have kind of a unique story, obviously being entrepreneur, professional athlete, and all of that. So why don't we just start there? Take 5 minutes or so and just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Well, it's obviously a long road to get to where I am today. But starting back, really the entrepreneurial part of my background. So my junior and senior year of high school, I had the opportunity to work for Dan Gilbert. So he's the founder of Rocket Mortgage, now multi-billion dollar mortgage company. Owner of the Quicken Loans, exactly. And owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. But when I worked for him back in 1996, he maybe had 80 or 90 team members at the time. So serving as his intern, I really got a crash course MBA in what it was like to have, build, start, and scale businesses, casting vision, getting people to buy into your crazy ideas as an entrepreneur, thinking anything is possible. And so went to college for a year, dropped out after my freshman year. My mom has her doctorate in education. So if you can imagine that phone call, hey, Mom, great news. I'm dropping out of college, but started my first business out of my apartment, couple $100, turned it into a multi-million-dollar company, sold that back in 2007, then started a mobile technology company. It was essentially 18 months idea to exit. So we were optimizing websites to work on mobile devices. This was back in 2010. We sold for close to 30 times revenue. And at this time, so imagine I'm 32 years old. And for the listeners out there that, played sports in high school, played in college, like you love the sport that you're playing. And my wife says to me, hey, you're 32. You've been a CEO since you were 19. If you don't do something you love, you're going to regret it the rest of your life. And so I said, well, great. Maybe I can make some minor league basketball team somewhere. And she's like, yeah, whatever keeps you out of the house. Cause I'm waking up in the morning, I'm delegating tasks to her like, hey, let's do this. And it was about a weekend. She's like, you need to go get a job. I don't care if you work at Starbucks, but you got to get out of the house. And so long story short, hired a professional skills coach, trainer, nutritionist, trained for 6 months. Ended up getting invited to a combine in Dayton, Ohio. So imagine I'm 32, 6 foot white guy showing up at a combine, and I'll call them kids. I mean, these are 21, 22-year-old D1 athletes. Some had already played professionally in Europe. And then here I show up with no basketball resume, but ended up getting invited to the camp in Rochester, New York. There were 25 guys there and ended up making the team. So I called my wife and I said, hey, great news. I made the team. The bad news is I'm moving you out of the house. You just spent 6 months remodeling and we're moving to Rochester, New York. So that's where the basketball piece comes in. Did that for a year and then subsequently started a healthcare analytics business that recently went public. And now, as you mentioned, I'm using all of my entrepreneurial experience to advise other entrepreneurs on how to build, scale, and exit their companies for high multiples.
I had another question I want to start with, but just hearing that story too, I'm curious, the business of professional sports, even the minor leagues, what was it like for a year just, going through that and coming from being an entrepreneur and building businesses, selling businesses, doing that, to then going and kind of working in an organization like that. What was there anything you took away or anything that was unique that you found versus the traditional entrepreneur world versus the sports world?
Well, there's a really strong connection between being an entrepreneur and being an athlete, or even just being in business, right? You have goals, you have accountability, you have discipline, you have to work within a team environment. And the Rochester Razor Sharks, they were a very successful franchise, winning, I think three or four championships in 6 years. So they had that winning culture there, and it was very easy for me to plug in my entrepreneurial skill sets into being a teammate. And I also grew up an athlete. But one thing I didn't mention is when the owner of the team found out my business background, he also made me co-owner and CEO while I was playing on the team. So that was, just an incredible lifelong dream. I had my wife and 3 sons at the time sitting courtside, being able to use my business experience and being an entrepreneur. But they're very closely tied together. And I actually love hiring athletes as well. They just have that competition and discipline.
Yeah, and they've kind of got that drive, right, as well too. I mean, I'm a former college athlete, and then now at this point, pretty highly competitive in endurance racing with Ironman, top 2% in the world at this point. And it's I love it because it keeps me structured. It keeps me, gives me something to continue to strive for, and challenges me mentally and physically, to be a better version of myself. And I think that if you haven't been an athlete, it's hard to understand that. But once you kind of do, right, it's something that really can impact yourself as an entrepreneur, and you can use it to your advantage and everything. And so, and that's maybe that is a good segue into the question I have for you is really from your experience. What is the one area that entrepreneurs should focus on the most to succeed? Where do you start, or where do you find the people that you work with, even the businesses you work with? Where's the place that they really need to focus on to make the most impact for themselves and their business?
Well, that question can be very specific, and it's a great question depending on the entrepreneur. But the first thing I tell people to do is start making decisions. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they get analysis paralysis, and some of that is based on budget, but just start the process, start making decisions. Decisions create action. That action creates feedback, and it helps you make better decisions going on. So one point of clarity I want to emphasize, it's not just making the right decision, because a lot of bad decisions can lead to better decisions later on. It creates that data and feedback that you need to continue to make progress.
That's a really good point. I've written posts on this before, that decisiveness is something that a lot of great leaders, entrepreneurs and stuff have. And it doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean the decision's always right, but it's the ability to make the decision, right? That's I think one of the most important things for people, because we can sit on a decision for so long. We can have that analysis paralysis, and it's you'll miss the opportunity a lot of times. And so it's part of its risk, part of its calculated risk, but being able to look at a situation, analyze it quickly, understand, and make a decision and say, okay, we're going to move forward this way, knowing that not everything will be right, but you can adjust to it, I think is a critical skill that every entrepreneur needs to develop. You have any thoughts on how people can become more decisive, or things that they can do to make it easier for them to build that trait?
Well, what you said was a perfect recap, so I appreciate you clarifying that. Yeah. It was well said, and this is exactly the problem. The first decision is go make a decision. Whatever it is, do something. Make it something small. And the other thing you can do is focus on making commitments and keeping the commitment, and that's how you build that trust and confidence in yourself. So start with something small, get some quick wins in the morning, easy decisions, and it just starts that momentum throughout the day to help build your confidence.
It's like a habit, it's like building a habit, right? And so I love, small decisions add up to bigger ones and so on. So that's a great point. Kind of the opposite side of that, besides decision making, I guess I would ask is from your work with clients and what you do and stuff, where are businesses, entrepreneurs challenged the most? Where's the biggest area that they should focus on to improve themselves that you find? Obviously, besides
The biggest,
decision making.
yeah, it's a great question. And I've been studying this recently. About 70% of your time as an entrepreneur, you're spending in what's called the struggle zone. I reframe it and calling it the growth zone. Again, relating things back to athletics or really anything you're passionate about, art, music, you're struggling. And that is where the growth happens. That is where the best ideas happen. That's where innovation happens. And so when I start working with an entrepreneur or business leader, I tell them you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable because you're going to spend 70% of your time in this area. So you can either dread going to the gym and working out or be focused on the results that you're getting as because of it. And again, some of the best ideas I've had in my businesses have come at the most traumatic times when we're scrambling to make payroll on a Friday. We figure out a different way to generate more revenue or cut costs. Like that pressure is what's going to refine the business and position you for growth.
As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. I can relate. Been there where business is growing tremendously, hundreds of percent a year and everything, and all of a sudden it's, hey, you're going to be out of money in 2 weeks. You're not going to be able to make payroll, and then you got to scramble and figure out every way to do it because growth sucks cash, especially if you're funding it out of your growth and stuff. And so a bigger discussion for a different day, because one of the things that I found unique about kind of some of the prep for this interview with you is that you talk a lot about building a foundation for success, but avoiding shortcuts. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, I want to take the shortcut, right? So explain what that means and why people should avoid the shortcuts.
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier, and it's something that Warren Buffett talks about. You have guys like Darren Hardy, but it's really the compound effect. It's doing the small things every day consistently over time to make a big impact. And I look at that with the foundation of the business. When you start the business, you write a business plan, maybe. You create a financial model, maybe. And once you do those things, they go in your top drawer and maybe you revisit them 6 to 8 months later. And what I have
for
done,
most businesses, 20 minutes into the business, they're out the window anyways.
They're out the window, and it looked great on paper. But what I have found in my business journey, I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by very successful businessmen, and I've had them serve as advisors on my company. So I didn't form a formal board with corporate governance, but they were people that could influence the business and also objectively look at the business that weren't in the day-to-day. And so the pillars that we focus on is creating a financial model, not of just of where you are, but where you want to go, and then reverse engineer how you want to get there, understanding your competitive advantage, continuing to innovate to maintain that advantage, go-to-market strategy, and then foundationally, what is your corporate structure? And making sure you have the right shareholder agreements, the right cap tables. I've seen entrepreneurs lose millions of dollars for not having the right share classes, liquidation preferences. So just making sure all of those things are addressed and it's not a set it and forget it activity. So we would have monthly advisory meetings where they would hold me accountable. I love being held accountable and holding other people accountable and very disciplined, but we all need someone holding us accountable. And so that's provided a lot of success in the last 3 businesses that I exited.
Yeah, so you talked about pillars, and that actually jogs a question for me that I wasn't thinking about, but principles, right? Pillars are like principles. And I guess my question is like, what are the principles that you have built your businesses upon? Because you've had a lot of success since 19, multiple exits, seven figures. So what are if you were going to start a business today, what would be the principles that you would use to build that thing upon and, that would live through the business for you?
What made you ask that question?
Just I heard you talk about pillars, and it just reminded me of principles. Like, what are the things that are the base of a business, And so I've got mine that I have in my businesses and everything else, but I'm curious to what you use to build yours and ensure their success.
So with every business that I've started, I do all the work first. So I
Okay.
try to create that bottom up buy-in, even though I've had a lot of success, even with starting this coaching business and, my podcast. Like I could have easily gone out and got a big agency and made this big production, but I wanted to do it the hard way because the more resistance you face earlier on, it goes back to strengthening that
Mm-hmm.
foundation. You learn a lot about the business and what needs to be done. So number one would be, bottom up buy-in, kind of doing a little bit of everything, learning the roles, and then figuring out what team I need to put in place. We mentioned it earlier, the compound effect. I try to stay away from any gimmicks, being new, getting back on social media. It's like everyone and their brother has a way to 10x your business. If I knew how to 10x your business in 3 months, I wouldn't need to be, I'd just be doing it myself. So there isn't
Mm-hmm.
a magic recipe. It's just avoiding gimmicks, the compound effect, bottom up buy in, and then back to making decisions.
Yeah, I love the bottom up buy in too. That's a great point. In fact, I want to talk about process with you. So we've got the base now, we got the principles. Now talk about your process, right? So we were just talking about principles, building a business, bottom up, those different things that you mentioned. But when you go work with a client, what's the process that you take them through? What are the areas of the business that you look at? Where do you find that there's the most opportunity typically? And this is general because obviously every client's different, but there's probably some consistencies across them that you see, right? So talk to us about your process. How do you work with clients? How do you help them? What are the areas that you focus on and that you find the biggest opportunity in?
Our engagements start with essentially a 30-day, depending on the responsiveness of the client, discovery process, call it due diligence, an assessment of where you are in the business. And it's not surprising because I've been there.
Hmm.
A lot of times you stay very busy as an entrepreneur because you don't want to face the reality of where you really are. Are you on track to hit your numbers? Do you even know what your numbers are? So we dig deep into the financial model of the business, pretty high level forensic accounting process to see really where the business is. So focusing on the financial model, looking at the marketplace. So what is your competitive advantage? Very rarely does a business have an idea or a product that no one else is doing. So you're competing with someone in the marketplace. How are you different? What problem are you solving for your client? And what additional problems could you be solving that can increase your revenue? We look at the revenue model. Is it a cash services business? Is it recurring revenue? Could we switch to recurring revenue to increase enterprise value? And then we're going to set a target of where do you want to be? Where is this business in the market cycle? Are we near an inflection point? And what is the best time for you to look at some sort of liquidity event? Because you either need to raise capital, exit the business, or continually reinvest into technology, or every product will become a commodity. And so it's just understanding where you sit in that. And then that's really the foundational pillars that we establish in the first 30 days.
You mentioned exit and having exited several businesses, and I've had the experience too. most deals don't close, right? Most deals don't get to a close because something derails them, whether it's, the legal or, the valuation changes or, all that stuff can happen in the diligence period. So most deals don't end up closing. But from your experience, talk about selling a business. What should people know? What are some of the things that, like, I always say, like, if you're planning on selling the business, you got to remove all the skeletons from your closet. You need to get started, well in advance, and make sure that you're really buttoned down in every area, right? Everything's documented. All again, your skeletons are taken care of that were in your closet. Your processes, all that stuff are solid, right? What have you seen? What's been your experience in selling, and what are some of the things that people maybe should look out for, as well as do to ensure that they maximize their value?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. It is not like putting your house up for sale. Like, you just don't put a sign in the front yard on a weekend and say, yeah, I'm going to sell my house just like I'm going to sell my business. It just doesn't work that way. And so
Right.
where we sit, we're not investment bankers. We're not out doing the dog and pony show for you. But we are business advisors that help you prepare for that liquidity event. And whether it's exiting, raising capital, taking on a strategic investment, it's making sure your financial model makes sense, that you have a path to get to where you want to go, and then also create a growth model. If more capital was invested, how can we accelerate the growth of this business? Again, making sure your shareholder agreements and cap table all make sense. So we typically recommend a minimum of a 12-month process, because you still have to run the business as well.
Right.
Just getting prepared for that liquidity event. And you may never have it, or you may not want to sell, but the pressure that it puts on you as the leader of the business and the pressure on the business ultimately produces great results, whether you exit or raise capital or not. It's really just some house cleaning, strengthening the foundation, and then it positions your business for that rapid growth.
Yeah, I've always said, run your business like you're going to own it forever, but build it to be sold. Because you never know when an opportunity might come along. So you have to be prepared for it. But you're right. I mean, good 12 months is, I would agree with you. It is like having a second job. I mean, when you're going through a process, once you get in the thick of it, so you have to be prepared for that. It's a wonderful thing. I think you'd agree. It's awesome to even go through the process. You learn a ton, like I remember the last process I went through, just organizational structure, how we structured the deal to be done and completed to maximize things, just was a masterclass in understanding, how you can do this in with the different entity types that are out there and all that type of stuff. And not something I ever really thought about, right? So there's tremendous lessons you will learn in going through it, but it's a full-time job in addition to your full-time job in running the business. So you have to be prepared for that. Have you ever had any deals fall through? Or go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and even if you could do it perfectly, you can't think objectively when you're in the day to day. It's just it's impossible. You're thinking about payroll, you're thinking about sales, then you get pregnant with the idea, we call it, of selling your business. Then you stop running your business. You have to have outside professional input through people that believe in you as an entrepreneur, believe in you as a CEO in a business, and they will help you get the foundation cemented and position you for growth.
Yeah, I'd agree with you too. I mean, having somebody like you who's been through it, to coach them, help them get ready, but then having a good group that knows how to run a process, I think is invaluable too. They'll help you maximize your dollar. They'll help you ensure that you're getting the most out of it. And they'll anything maybe you haven't seen or haven't fixed yet that you didn't even think about, they'll point out to you so you can do. So I think it's worth it to pay those groups if you have a really good one. I had a great experience on the last one with one, and they were worth every penny. And so I think that's there's a lot of those different groups out there. But I would suggest that it's worth, because you're gonna pay them and you're gonna give some up your deal to do it. But I think it's worth using them. Would you agree with that? Have you used outside resources to take you through a process before?
Well, I had an advisory board on all three companies. I gave them
Mm,
equity in the business, but I
there
also
you go.
had a phenomenal investment banker, best in class accountant, best in class
Yep.
attorney. No one wants to pay for their attorney, uh, but I'm telling
Totally
you,
worth
they will cover their
it.
costs because it just
Yeah.
takes one term in the term sheet that you miss or
Right.
one line in the uh, earnout agreement. I've seen
Yep.
these as well come back, clawbacks. The
Oh yeah.
professionals are worth paying for.
Hmm. Yeah, your lawyers need to be just as good or better than those on the other side of the table.
Right.
So, yeah, great points around that. I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about your pro athlete experience, but I also want to talk about how you. I know you're really devoted to family, and you talk about. I think I've seen it's balancing profit with purpose. I think is what you say. So, what does that mean? How can somebody bring that into their lives, and how has it impacted yours?
It's a great question. And I'm not a millennial, but I've had a lot of millennials work for me. And so I'm careful with the purpose comment because not everyone's going to find their passion and a way to monetize it. So you can
Mm,
get whatever type of job that puts food on the table and provides for your lifestyle and use that money to find purpose in other areas, but you can hit that sweet spot at some point in life where your purpose also is something that you can monetize. And now after 25 years of being in 5 different industries that I had no background in and really no attachment to, I finally feel like my purpose and profit have both intersected where I'm inspiring other entrepreneurs. I'm helping them be successful. I'm positioning them for massive exits using all of the failures that I have learned from over the past 25 years to help expedite their process. You'd mentioned the family. I've been married 20 years and I've moved my wife 22 times and she's still with me. So she is the real champion of the family. And I have 4 amazing boys. 3 of them are teenagers. So for those of you that don't have kids that are teenagers yet, enjoy it because parenting becomes very different when you have 3 teenage boys and I have a 10-year-old. So love being a dad, love being a husband, and creating an environment in my new company where we have that passion to really empower entrepreneurs. But at the end of the day, we all are working very, very hard, and it's good to be rewarded for that financially. I mean, money
yeah.
empowers you to do a lot of things. It really magnifies who you are. So we're very active in the community and giving with the finances that we have.
Oh, that's awesome. And then, do you have a structure that you put in place so that you can maximize your time with your family and stuff to give? I mean, 4 boys, 3 teenagers. I imagine they're playing basketball or some sports like that. So you guys have to be, hopping on, on a weekly basis, running around with all them.
They all play hockey. So my
Okay.
oldest, when he was 8, we were living in Boston. I was coaching his basketball team. I was like, this is great. Get to coach all 4 of my boys through basketball. He decides to play street hockey one day and then fell in love with it, and the rest followed suit. So we have 3 hockey players, which I think is even more, or 4 hockey players, 3 teenage hockey players. So it's even more work than basketball was. But you brought up the time with family, and this is something I've learned throughout my journey is there are different seasons in life. And
Mm,
right now we're in a building season where I've learned how to communicate with my wife over the last 20 years too. So I tell her like, hey, and she knows it. She is telling me like, hey, this is a building season, no pressure. I'll pick up these areas with the kids. We've had times of harvest where I don't have to
mm,
work a lot, which there's some downsides to that as well, kind of getting into her domain too much. But I think it's really important to recognize what season you're in as a person, what season your business is in, and then what tools are you going to need to be successful in that season. So if you're building, just know like, hey, the family time may suffer a little bit, but make sure the time you do get is quality. If you're reaping, maybe get more quantity with them, but be preparing for that next season.
No, those are great points too, and I think I think that's something that I think we instinctively kind of know that, but we don't take the time to do it, if that makes sense. As
Yes.
entrepreneurs, right? We're going 100 million miles an hour and stuff, but in taking the step, I just say, okay, like where am I right now? What makes the most difference? How do I communicate that? How do I ensure that we have cohesiveness among family and stuff like that? Because you know how hard it can be with building a business and stuff and family and everything else that's going on, and you can bring that home, and so you really have to communicate well. And I think that's something that entrepreneurs we can all work on and do better. So that's a really great point. My last question is kind of back to pro athlete, entrepreneur. You're playing at the highest levels. So you started out and you said, there's a lot of parallels between, being an athlete and being an entrepreneur and stuff. So talk a little bit about, number one, how did the experience as a pro athlete after being a business owner and doing the things that you've done help you more, if it did, right, as an entrepreneur once you came out of that? And then what are some of those other parallels that you see between sports and entrepreneurship that you feel are important?
So the first thing it did was give me a lot of confidence that anything is possible. Like if you look at me, I'm 6 feet tall, 190 pounds at the time, maybe added about 10 since then, so close to 200 now. But the belief that whatever you set your mind to, you can really accomplish anything. And it gave me a lot of confidence going into my next business, which was healthcare analytics. No background in healthcare, no background in analytics, but I believed that I could do it. The second thing was on this basketball team, even though I became co-owner and CEO, was playing, the guys didn't really care. And so it put me in a position where for 13 years, I was the CEO. I was the guy. I was the one that people looked to for leadership. All the pressure was on me. I had to play a different role on this team. I was probably number 10 or 11 on the depth chart, so getting a couple minutes here and there, but putting all of that work in, very little reward in the game. And being in that environment, I was the guy that had to be the hardest worker because I almost didn't belong. So, I had to earn the respect of the guys, and they did. They respected how hard I worked in practice and how to relate to the team and not necessarily being the guy leading the team. So it really, stretched my comfort zone, so to speak.
That that's a great set of points around being CEO, but also participating and how to do that with a team as well. It's a fine line, right, between being your boss and your friend and teammate and stuff, but also holding people accountable and stuff. And it's hard for a lot of people to walk that. Is there anything that you took away on how to walk that line better as an entrepreneur?
Oh, it's tough. I like to get in the trenches. I like to joke around, but I also like to hold people accountable. So even as a parent, I probably joke around too much with my boys, and then I'm trying to discipline them. So it's kind of confusing. My wife says I confuse them all the time. So I'm still growing in that area. I love to work hard and still joke around too and hold people accountable. So still growing in that area.
Well, I think that's a place that we always are growing as entrepreneurs. I don't think it ever ends. Okay, it's time for Adam's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you're going to leave this world tomorrow and you can only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Adam, what are your Misfit 3?
My number one is going to be start before you're ready. And it's to get out of the gate, try it out, try things, test, fail, grow, repeat.
Okay.
Number 2 would be the compound effect. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. There are no shortcuts to success. There is no straight path to success. It's doing the little things every day over a long period of time. That is where you'll make a significant impact. You ready for number three?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So a lot of people get afraid in life, but one thing that has helped me, so they're controlled and dominated by fear, but without fear, there is no opportunity, right? So if you're afraid of something, you're afraid of stepping forward, afraid of stepping into something, you have to realize that opportunity and fear both coexist. It's which belief system are you going to have? Are you going to believe in the faith of the opportunity or the fear of failure?
I love that. I love that. Oh, I love all three of those. I love that last one though, the faith of opportunity or the fear of failure. That is it's a great distinction to make. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
You can go to my website, Adam House Senior, so adamhousesr.com. But I'd love to have you as well. Follow me on Instagram, House Strong Life, and we have a YouTube channel called The House of Bricks.
Perfect. We'll link to all that in the show notes so that people can find it. The best show notes in the business. No offense, Adam, for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, your first episode with us, welcome. It is such an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular listener, subscriber. And again, if you like this, comment. Share it with others and help get this message out. And for all of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you. And then, yes, go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself as part of my personal growth routine. Every single week, I go back through these episodes with great guests like Adam, and I take my best pieces of wisdom and insights, tips, tricks, and habits and things like that. And I share those with you. So check those out and then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like, comment on it. Like I said, help share Adam's message because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. And so maybe something that Adam shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Adam, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and your insight today.
Honor to be on the show. Thank you for having me.